What's up, you freaking geniuses? So in this video, I'm going to teach you how to use the remainder theorem and synthetic division to evaluate polynomial functions, all right? So we're going to go over just two examples. Here's the first one right here. So this is the function that we're given. F of x is equal to 3x cubed plus 8x squared plus 5x minus 7. And we want to evaluate this function when x is equal to -2. So what we normally do is basically just take this number, -2, and plug it into the function, right? So that's called direct substitution, where you just plug in a number into basically all of these x terms, right? We would normally just plug in a -2 into there and see what pops out. Now, in this case, using the remainder theorem, we have to perform synthetic substitution. So that just involves using synthetic division, all right? Now, if you don't know how to do synthetic division, I'm going to explain it right here anyways. So first of all, this is the number that we want to plug into the function, right? So we're just going to put that number out here on the side, -2. And then we're going to draw this big L shape right here. This is where we do the division. And then you see all your coefficients, right, in the function. So we have a 3, +8, +5, and a -7. So we're just going to bring those straight down. So we're going to write +3, +8, +5, and -7. Now, the first thing that you do is you take your first coefficient, all right, and you just bring that straight down here. Okay, next we're going to multiply this number out here by whatever number's down here. So -2 times 3 is equal to -6. So you put that in the next column. So we'll put a -6 right there, okay? And then now going forward, all these numbers, we're just gonna add them together going down. So 8 plus -6, or in other words, 8 minus 6 is equal to +2. And then again, we got a number down here, right? So we're just gonna multiply these together. So -2 times 2 is equal to -4, all right? So we got two numbers right here next to each other, right? So we're just gonna add them down. So 5 minus 4 is equal to +1. So we got another number down here, right? So we'll multiply it by this guy. So -2 times 1 is equal to -2, all right? So then lastly, -7 minus 2 is equal to -9. Okay, now this last number that we got, this is the remainder. So let's label that as r. So let's say r is equal to -9. Okay, so this is the answer that we would get if we plug in -2 into the function. So here f of x, well, we could evaluate that, right? We could say instead f of -2, right? So if we plug in -2 into the function, the answer that we would get is -9. Or in other words, again, it's the same thing as the remainder. So here we could simply say that f of -2 is equal to -9. All right, so let's do one more example here. So here we have f of x is equal to 15x to the 4th plus 10x cubed minus 6x squared plus 14. And this time we want to evaluate this function when x is equal to -2/3. So again, we're going to use synthetic division. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is write this number, -2/3. We're going to write it out here on the left. And then we're going to draw our big synthetic division symbol. And the next thing we have to do is bring down all our coefficients, right? 15, +10, -6, and 14, right? So we're going to write 15, +10, -6, and then we're going to put a 0 right here, and then we'll put 14 right here. Okay, so where did this 0 come from? Well, let's look at our terms here. So here you can see we have x to the 4th, x to the 3rd, x squared. As you can see, there is no just x, right? So since we skipped over the just x terms, we're going to put a 0 right there in its place, okay? And then lastly, we just have our constants, right? They have no variables attached, so we'll just put that at the very end. Okay, great. So again, the first thing that we want to do here is just take our first coefficient and just bring it straight down, right? So we're going to write 15 right there. So then here we just need to multiply the number on the outside with whatever's down here. So -2/3 times 15, and maybe it's easier if I write it out here, right? 2/3 times 15. 2 times 15 is equal to 30, so we get 30/3, which is equal to 10, right? But remember, negative times a positive is a negative, right? So this is -10. So then we'll put a -10 right here, and then we'll add these two. So 10 minus 10 is 0. And then here we'll multiply again, so -2/3 times 0 is 0, all right? So that was easy, luckily. So then here we have -6 plus 0, which is -6. And then here we have negative 2/3 times negative 6. So we can just write it over here, right? 2/3 times 6. So multiplying straight across again, this is 12/3, or in other words, 4. And then a negative times a negative is a positive. So positive 4, right? So then adding here again, 0 plus 4 is just 4. And then lastly, negative 2/3 times 4. Let's write that out here on the side. 2/3 times 4 is equal to 8/3, right? And this is a negative times a positive, so that's a negative, right? So negative 8/3, all right? Now lastly, we just need to add these together. So 14 minus 8/3. In order to convert a whole number into an equivalent fraction, we have to multiply this whole number on top by this denominator, right? So 14 times 3, well, let's see, 15 times 3 is 45, so 14 times 3 is 42. So 14 is the same thing as 42 over 3. So then here, let's say 42 over 3 minus 8 over 3. 42 minus 8 is 34. So here we get, so 14 minus 8/3 is equal to 34/3, right? 34/3. All right, great. So we finally got our remainder, right? So here we can say that r is equal to 34/3. So again, this is the answer we would get if we plugged in this fraction, this negative 2/3, into this function. So let's say f of negative 2/3, this is equal to 34/3. Boom! So if you found the video helpful, make sure to leave a thumbs up down below. And if you have any questions, let me know in the comments section below.